Hello, my name is Matt Kennedy, and welcome to the Physics Football Podcast. As many of you know, the issue of head trauma is prevalent in the NFL, NHL, and even the PLO. But today, our main focus will be on football because of its well-known data on head trauma and current and even former players. The NFL averages 0.41 concussions per game. There were 224 concussions this past season alone. That means 13% of the entire league was concussed after this most recent season. Moreover, a study of 111 former deceased NFL players' brains found out 110 out of 111 had CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Moreover, the effects of various head trauma cases have been linked to violent and even tragic behavior of former players. Most notably, and some might say most famously, Aaron Hernandez. It is clear that this has become a crisis for the league to deal with. So today, we bring in some might say the most hated man in all of football, Commissioner of the NFL, Roger Goodell.
Thanks for having me on today, Matt. The issue of head trauma is a very important one that the NFL is working really hard to deal with.
Yeah, thanks, Roger, for coming on the show with us today. So tell us exactly, what is head trauma?
Well, head trauma is the pain that Seahawks fans felt when throwing the ball on the 1 yard line instead of giving the ball to Marshawn Lynch. But really, by definition, it's a brain dysfunction caused by an outside force, usually a violent blow to the head.
I'm not gonna lie, it kind of sounds really broad. Are there any common symptoms or signs that can lead one to assume that someone has head trauma, since there doesn't seem to be a specific way identifying that someone has it?
Well, our studies from the most common form of head trauma in the NFL players is concussions. They can be caused when the two players collide, when a player has an impact on the ground, or is hit midair. And in all these cases, there are two objects colliding into each other. Now, according to this third law, we know that these objects, when they collide, will exert equal forces on each other in opposite directions. What it means is, when they collide, a force will be going into this object and this one in equal magnitude. This is the danger of this is that we have to limit the forces produced on both players, because no matter how hard one player goes another, he will still feel the reverberations of his own hit. So that can lead to the brain vibrating and hitting the skull, causing a concussion.
So yeah, concussions definitely sound like something not to be taken lightly. They sound like a very serious matter. So kind of playing off of that, what is the NFL's policy when a player is suspected to be concussed?
Well, if a player is injured and will definitely is assigned to be placed in the concussion protocol, where he will be evaluated for concussion, and then we'll get a prognosis for how long he needs to be out of the league. However, in every single game, there are various trainers around the stadium, constantly viewing every play and the players themselves, trying to see if players get up strange, look confused. If they suspect that a player may be concussed, they will call a timeout, pull the player off the field, and bring him to the trainer's room to be evaluated.
So, tell me, Roger, how did the NFL respond to the awareness of head trauma and news of its effects on players who may suffer from it?
Well, the NFL being the best sports league and always paying attention to the fans and making smart decisions and not necessarily finding players for stupid things, we've been handling this in a professional and responsible way. All the way back in 1949, the league recognized the need for helmets and mandated that all players must wear leather helmets. Now granted, these were not as advanced or protective as today's helmets, but it was the first big step in protecting players. Later, in 2004, the single bar helmet was banned because of its lack to protect players from head-on collisions, especially in the forehead. These are just a few examples of the NFL taking great strides to protect its players.
So, assuming that you took these things into effect that played a role in the development of the helmet, what are some common symptoms the NFL has identified in players that suffer from head trauma?
Well, in the short term of concussions, we see they have blurry vision, confusion, and painful migraines. However, long-term we've exhibited early onset memory loss, aggressive behavior, and even depression and other tragic behaviors exhibited by players. It's because of this that the NFL is doing everything it can to protect players, current, former, and future.
So, assuming that the NFL has taken the proper precautions and doing everything it can to prevent head trauma, of course, does the NFL have a current sponsored helmet or a current official helmet of the NFL?
Well, the official company that makes helmets for the NFL is Rydell. Now, players are free to choose different designs on the face mask to improve their visibility depending on their position as an O-lineman, kicker, wide receiver, etc. However, all helmets must be approved by the NFL before the season. However, the design of the helmet is the exact same each way. So, currently, the most recommended helmet is the Rydell SpeedFlex. It is designed that the outer shell of the helmet may bend, which is different from helmets in the past, because of something called impulse. Impulse is equal to force times time, and it measures the amount of force exerted in a collision, which means in a collision, there are two objects normally. Those objects will have to have all energy going in must be conserved, thanks to the law of conservation of energy. So that means in a moment of contact, the amount of force and time on the side of the equation must be equal. So if the amount of time is short for both people, the amount of force will be greater. So if a player collides and they bounce off each other, that is an extremely brief time, meaning massive forces will be exerted on both players. However, with the ability to compress, it increases the amount of time of contact, which decreases the overall force or impulse on both players. Moreover, the face mask of the helmet is designed to do the exact same thing, compress, and increase time of contact, especially for players like O-linemen and defensive linemen who have head-to-head collisions almost every single play.
So, not to take anything away from what you're saying, the importance of the development of a helmet, but kind of just a little sign up that I, for one, have noticed, and I'm assuming that other spectators of football and people who've watched the NFL and college have noticed. But the NFL was only allowed to use one base color for their helmet, and this was mandated in 2013. And I, for one, would like to see this rule change because of, well, for one thing, colleges, we have the college helmets in the back of us. And though these are the standard colors of the helmets colleges use, colleges can use multiple colors if they so choose. And they can be as creative as they want and use as many colors as they would like. But the NFL cannot. They have to stick with one base color of the helmet for the whole season. And I was wondering what your thoughts on this were, and if you think that the NFL could maybe uplift this rule to kind of help and maybe make more creativity in the uniforms of the helmets.
Well, although the design of the helmet has absolutely nothing to do with the protection of the player, the league is all about branding. Unfortunately, even as this is an extremely simple rule to change and would not cause any issues that we know of, this is the No Fun League, and we will not be doing that. Now, if you want to ask me a question about helmet safety, I'm more than glad to answer that. But simple questions about things that will improve the fans' experience, I will not tolerate.
Well, that definitely is an unfortunate thing to hear. All right, back to the issue and kind of the main purpose of why you're on the college show today. So another thing I was going to talk about the helmets is I've noticed, and from when I've played and even watching, that when people wear helmets, it is very likely that they have a chin strap with it. You almost never see someone wearing or playing in a game with a helmet without a chin strap. And so, because chin straps are always on helmets and you can always see them included with the helmet, some might say, is it important for the chin strap to be included in the helmet, or if the helmet is tight enough, is it okay to just disregard the chin strap?
That is a very dangerous thing to do. It is imperative that each player has a chin strap, because a helmet that's loose will not be able to serve the same functions as all the design features to protect them as if it is tight. You see, because when a player makes contact with another player's helmet, at the same time, the helmet is also making a collision with the head, if you think about it. If you don't have your helmet tightened by the chin strap, the compression pads inside the helmet will not be able to decrease the amount of time of contact, which decreases the force. It would cause the helmet to violently strike your head if it was loose, which would create a massive impulse on the player. And that leads me to explain the biggest difference between helmets of now and of old, is that their lack of compression made players bounce off each other extremely violently. It's even if a play targeting is banned, which is using the crown of your helmet to hit another player. It still happens from time to time, especially on kickoffs, and the ability to compress saves players' lives.
So that is definitely something I wanted to touch on, because the chin straps are a very important part in the helmet. But no, that's all the time we have today. And as I'm wondering, is there any chance you could change the rule regarding the cleats or creativity there?
Well, unfortunately, we will continue to fine players that tens of thousands of dollars for wearing multicolored cleats because this is the No Fun League, and as long as if it benefits the fans, we certainly are not doing that because we take every single step to ruin the fan experience as the No Fun League. But again, we're doing everything we can to protect the players. Helmets that compress, they don't bounce off. And thank you for having me on today. I am the worst commissioner in NFL history. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming on with us today. And yeah, that's all the time we have today, and thank you for watching.